I texted my wife while I was with her lover and said, "The divorce is going to happen, I know everything." The answer didn't come. On the other side of the city, at that moment, the message was vibrating on her cell phone, abandoned on the table of an expensive restaurant. They were sitting, laughing, sharing a dinner washed down with wine and complicit looks. I knew exactly where they were. Her lover, confident and without any notion that I was watching their every move, seemed like the king of a dirty conquest. She, with her hands shaking and her eyes restless, looked like a piece he was moving in a calculated game. They didn't know I had made the decision. For months, I collected signs, putting together a puzzle that she didn't even realize was being put together. Short and contextless phone calls, different perfumes in the air at home, increasingly flimsy excuses for unexpected absences. First came anger, that overwhelming desire to confront, to demand answers. But I controlled myself. I decided that the game would be mine. If she and he thought they had control of the situation, they were about to find out otherwise. As they laughed, I remembered the nights I waited for her, not knowing she was in other arms. The sensation was suffocating, a knife being stabbed and slowly rotated. I once heard my mother say that silence is the deadliest weapon of all, and I decided to use it against them both. Not just silence, but waiting. Every detail of my message was meticulously thought out. I know everything. There was nothing more terrifying for someone with secrets to hide. Back at the restaurant, the insistent vibration of her cell phone interrupted the conversation. She looked at the viewfinder, froze, and I could almost feel the blood run cold in her veins. He noticed her expression, leaned in slightly and asked something I couldn't hear, but the answer was clear. She responded with a nervous denial, but the cell phone remained in her hand. She stood up abruptly, walking to the bathroom while he watched her, curious. The game was starting to turn around. In the bathroom, I imagined the expression of horror as he read my message. Did he think I was there? That I knew everything about him? Maybe you thought about calling, but that didn't happen. While she was trying to process the situation, I had already started my next move. I sent a second message, directly to him. Be careful with the choices you make. Some of them may cost you more than you think. I wanted him to know that I was there, that I saw them, that I knew their intentions from the beginning. She knew he probably used her, like other men who approach married women out of vanity or a desire for control. My objective was clear, to destabilize them, to reverse power. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choices crushing them. She returned to the table visibly shaken. He noticed and asked, now more seriously. They exchanged quick words, which culminated in the sound of a plate falling to the floor as she, apparently unable to contain herself, raised her voice. For the first time, she realized he was not an ally. He wasn't concerned about her well-being, but about the impact of the situation on his own life. There, the perfect veneer began to crack. The man who seemed so sure, so confident, suddenly found himself surrounded by doubts. From afar, I watched as the two hurriedly left the restaurant, getting into his car. I was imagining the conversation that took place in that closed space. Did he blame her for being careless? Did she question his involvement and the danger it represented? The adrenaline in me was growing. For months, I was the betrayed man, the silent victim, but in that moment, everything was in my hands. Every move I had calculated was working perfectly. This man, who thought he was untouchable, was about to discover that his actions had consequences. She, on the other hand, would have to deal with the fact that the husband who had always been a safe haven was now a hurricane, about to tear down everything she had built with lies. What they didn't know was that I wasn't alone. It wasn't just the cuckolded husband who sent cryptic messages. There was something more going on, a web of revelations involving more than just the three of them. And now, as I watched their car disappear down the road, a question came to me: did they have any idea what was coming? Or rather, was I prepared to face everything that was yet to be revealed? Welcome to our channel. Here, We do not support any type of betrayal. The stories you will hear are fictional and have a clear purpose, to show how betrayal is capable of destroying lives, dreams and relationships. Get ready, because what comes next is an intense story, full of twists and emotions that will move you. Take a deep breath and embark on this shocking narrative now. Good story. Lucas has always been a methodical man. His days began early, before the sun even appeared over the horizon, with a steaming cup of coffee and reading the day's news. He liked the stability his routine provided him. The office where he worked was a direct reflection of his personality, organized, discreet, impeccable. Lucas was the type of man who valued predictability and, during the 12 years of marriage with Amanda, this trait had become an anchor that supported her in the most uncertain moments. However, the same sense of order that had once been an attraction was beginning to feel like a cage, even if Amanda would never say it out loud. Amanda was the opposite of Lucas in many ways. Spontaneous, creative and with an energy that never seemed to run out, she lit up any room she entered. An artist at heart, he spent his days in his studio, mixing paints, sketching ideas and getting lost in the creative chaos that was the space where his works came to life. She was a charming woman, with an easy smile and warm eyes, but she carried a restlessness with her, as if something inside her was never fully satisfied. The couple lived in a cozy house, surrounded by a small garden that Lucas personally took care of. He said the garden was a symbol of their marriage, something that required constant care, patience and dedication. Amanda, in turn, saw the garden as a blank canvas, full of possibilities. It was common for her to move plants around or add vibrant colors to the fences, which always made Lucas sigh, but he never complained. After all, it was these little surprises that he learned to accept as part of her essence. The life they shared seemed perfect at first glance. They had a well-established routine. He left for work at 8 sharp, while she spent the morning painting. They had lunch together a few times a week, and Lucas always made a point of arriving on time for dinner, when Amanda prepared recipes that she invented herself. There was laughter and conversation. There was comfort. But beneath the calm surface, small signs of detachment began to appear, almost imperceptible, like cracks hiding beneath a layer of fresh paint. Lucas noticed it, but didn't know how to deal with it. Amanda, on the other hand, felt it, but didn't know how to explain it. They loved each other, or at least that was what they both constantly repeated. Amanda still felt her heart beat faster when he entered the room with that contained and gentle smile. Lucas still admired the way she seemed to transform any room into something more vibrant just with her presence. But the connection between them, that flame that had burned so brightly at the beginning, seemed to be wavering, almost extinguished. That Friday, while Lucas was fixing his tie in the mirror, Amanda was watching him from across the room. He seemed so distant, so trapped in his own mind. She wanted to say something, break that silence that was becoming more and more frequent between them, but the words seemed to escape. Lucas, in turn, knew that something needed to be said, something that wasn't about bills to pay or work, but the routine seemed to drain his energy. The weekend was approaching, and Amanda suggested a small trip to the neighboring city, something they used to do at the beginning of their marriage. Lucas, although hesitant, agreed, but his eyes didn't shine with the idea like they used to. He knew Amanda was looking for something, a spark that he might no longer be able to ignite. Still, he decided to try. He prepared the car, researched a good hotel and packed his bags, all with the meticulousness that was characteristic of him. Amanda, however, felt that the gesture, while genuine, lacked the enthusiasm she had hoped for. When they arrived at the hotel, a charming place overlooking a lake, Amanda tried to create moments that broke the invisible barrier between them. A walk by the lake, a candlelit dinner, even dancing under the starry sky. Lucas participated in everything, but always with the impression that he was playing a role. He was attentive, polite, but something inside him seemed absent, lost in thoughts that Amanda couldn't reach. Back in their routine, the tension they tried to alleviate on the trip seemed more evident. Lucas immersed himself in his work with redoubled intensity, as if he wanted to make up for something. Amanda, in turn, spent more time in the studio, her canvases becoming increasingly abstract, reflecting the confusion of emotions that she could not express in words. Conversations between them became automatic, without depth. The "How was your day?" it turned into a formality rather than a genuine question. Despite everything, Lucas believed that, with effort, things would return to normal. He still planned surprises for Amanda, like flowers left on the table or notes in his studio, but she didn't seem to notice in the same way as before. Amanda, in turn, wondered if something inside her had changed, or if the love she felt for Lucas was enough to fill the emptiness that accompanied her. That morning, Lucas left home early, leaving a note on the table. "Tonight, I want to have dinner with you. Just the two of us." Amanda read the message while drinking her coffee, and for a moment she felt the warmth of that old connection. He decided he would do something special, preparing a dinner reminiscent of the first years of marriage. Maybe that gesture could be the start of something new, a fresh start that they both needed. Meanwhile, Lucas was in the office, but his mind was wandering. Something in him told him there was more in that distance than he could see. The restlessness was growing, but he didn't know if it was paranoia or if his intuition was warning him about something that was about to change forever. The day started with the same rhythm as always, but something was different. Lucas felt a discomfort that he couldn't explain. Deep down, he knew it wasn't something new, but rather an accumulation of sensations that he had been ignoring for months. Amanda was especially silent that morning, moving around the house as if carrying a weight that Lucas couldn't identify. He watched as she absent-mindedly stirred her coffee cup, her eyes lost somewhere beyond the window. He wanted to ask what was wrong, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the fear of hearing an answer that would change everything. Amanda, in turn, struggled to hide her uneasiness. Lucas's invitation to a special dinner the night before had awakened memories she wasn't ready to face. She wanted to believe that there was still a chance for both of them, but the distance between them seemed insurmountable. When Lucas left for work, leaving a hasty kiss on her forehead, Amanda sighed deeply. She took out her cell phone and looked at the screen, hesitantly. An unread message flashed on the screen, and his heart raced as he decided whether to respond to it. In the office, Lucas tried to concentrate on his tasks, but his mind was far away. He wondered if Amanda really was as committed to rebuilding her marriage as he was. He remembered the empty conversations, the averted looks, the moments when she seemed absent, even though she was by his side. For the first time, the possibility of something more serious hit him. He quickly dismissed the thought, preferring to believe it was just a result of his own insecurity. Meanwhile, Amanda decided to leave the house to clear her mind. She told herself she needed a moment away from the studio, but she knew exactly where she was going. The journey to the restaurant was quick, but it seemed endless. Every kilometer traveled made the knot in his stomach grow. When she arrived, she got out of the car and adjusted her hair, trying to look confident. He was already there, sitting at a table in the corner, smiling with the familiarity of someone who was already part of his life in an intimate way. The hours passed slowly for Lucas, who felt his anxiety growing for no apparent reason. He decided to send a message to Amanda, asking if she wanted to have lunch together. The response took longer than usual, and when it arrived, it was brief: "Not today, I'm busy." He tried to ignore the discomfort, but something in his mind wouldn't leave him alone. So he decided to leave work early to surprise her. He got in the car and drove home, trying to imagine how he could make dinner that night memorable. Amanda, however, was still in the restaurant, and the conversation with the man in front of her had changed from a casual tone to something more serious. He teased her with comments that made her laugh but also made her uncomfortable. Despite the intimate atmosphere they shared, Amanda felt divided. She knew it was wrong, but the adrenaline of being there was addictive. He leaned across the table, took your hand, and said something that made your cheeks flush. Amanda looked around nervously, but didn't remove her hand. Lucas parked the car in front of the house and noticed that Amanda's car was not there. He frowned, finding her absence strange at a time when he was usually at home. He entered and found everything silent. He decided to send another message, but got no response. Something inside him said he should wait, but restlessness made him pick up his phone and access a location app he had installed a while ago for emergencies. He hesitated before using it, but upon seeing her location, his eyes narrowed. At the restaurant, Amanda realized that she had lost track of time. He took out his cell phone to check the time and saw several message notifications from Lucas. Her breathing became faster, but before she could respond to them, the man in front of her stopped her, holding her wrist gently. He suggested that they go to another place, a more discreet place, away from prying eyes. Amanda hesitated, but followed him. They both left through the side door, laughing softly like two teenagers getting into trouble. Lucas arrived at the location indicated by the app and parked at a safe distance. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but something kept him going. It was then that he saw Amanda leave through the side door, accompanied by a man he didn't recognize. They were too close, the closeness of someone sharing secrets. Lucas's stomach turned, and he felt a wave of nausea and anger that threatened to explode. He watched them get into a car together, and before he could think, he decided to follow them. The journey seemed endless, each curve increasing the tension within Lucas. He kept a safe distance, but didn't take his eyes off the car in front of him. Amanda looked nervous, looking in the rearview mirror, but the man next to her didn't seem to notice. Finally, they parked in front of a hotel. Lucas stopped the car on a nearby street, turning off the lights so he wouldn't be noticed. He saw them get out of the car and enter the lobby, exchanging muffled laughs. Lucas remained motionless in the car for a few minutes, trying to process what he had just witnessed. He wanted to go in, confront them, demand answers, but something stopped him. Anger mixed with pain, and he realized he needed to act more intelligently. He took out his cell phone and took a photo of them entering the hotel. He knew he needed proof, not just for himself, but for the next step he would decide to take. As the elevator ascended the hotel, Amanda felt the weight of her choices. She looked at the man next to her and saw in him not only a lover, but also a reflection of her own dissatisfaction and impulsiveness. For a moment, she thought about turning back, but the sound of the elevator indicating the floor made her swallow her guilt and move on. When the doors opened, they walked out side by side, disappearing into the hallway. In the car, Lucas gripped the steering wheel so hard that his knuckles turned white. He knew that moment would mark the point of no return in his life. He picked up his cell phone again, but this time not to take photos. He began typing a message, each word heavy with the pain and certainty of what he had just discovered. When he pressed the send button, he felt that, in that instant, something inside him was also breaking, perhaps forever. Lucas remained motionless in the car for what seemed like an endless amount of time. The messages he had sent to Amanda, now ignored, flashed back on the phone screen like a cruel reminder of the growing emptiness between them. He knew that the decision he had made to follow that path had no return, and even so, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was yet to be revealed. The betrayal was a blow, but there was more, something he felt deep in his chest, an uneasiness that couldn't be explained just by what he had witnessed. Inside the hotel room, Amanda was sitting on the edge of the bed, arms crossed, avoiding the eyes of the man who seemed too confident for her liking at that moment. He approached, trying to break the tension, but Amanda didn't react the way he expected. Her answers were short, unenthusiastic, as if the weight of everything was finally starting to fall on her. He tried to be comforting, but the sense of urgency Amanda felt inside her kept her from focusing. Lucas knew he couldn't continue standing still. He got out of the car, adjusting the hood of his coat to cover part of his face, and entered the hotel. The reception was silent, just one employee distracted by a computer screen. Lucas had the room number thanks to a confirmation message he had intercepted weeks ago when he began to suspect Amanda. He climbed to the indicated floor, each step increasing his tension, until he stopped in front of the door that now symbolized the end of everything. He didn't hit. I didn't want to give them the opportunity to prepare. With a firm movement, he opened the door, finding Amanda and her lover standing, as if they were arguing. The shock on her face was immediate, followed by an expression of panic that Lucas had never seen before. The man next to her tried to adopt a confident stance, but Lucas's gaze disarmed him before any words were spoken. Amanda stuttered something, but Lucas interrupted her. He wasn't there to hear justifications. Instead, he threw a folder he had brought with him onto the table, full of photos, message logs and all the evidence he had accumulated over time. Amanda looked at the folder as if it were an impossible weight to carry. Lucas didn't raise his voice, but his words were sharper than any scream could be. He wanted her to feel, word for word, the impact of everything he discovered and everything she had destroyed. The man tried to intervene, but Lucas stared at him, making it clear that this was not a conversation for him. Still, he insisted, saying that Amanda wasn't happy in her marriage, that she needed something more, something that Lucas apparently couldn't offer. Lucas's response came in an icy tone, but filled with deep pain. He made it clear that it wasn't about what Amanda needed, but about the choices she made, the lies, and how she involved a stranger in something that should have been resolved between the two of them. Amanda finally broke the silence, her voice trembling, filled with tears that wouldn't stop falling. She apologized, but the words sounded empty, as if they were insufficient to repair what had been destroyed. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling his anger begin to give way to an overwhelming tiredness. It was then that he revealed what he had discovered in the investigation he started almost by accident, something she never expected him to discover. He tossed an additional envelope onto the table, which Amanda recognized immediately. It was correspondence she thought was hidden, something she believed was beyond Lucas's reach. He revealed that her lover was a man involved in an emotional and financial manipulation scheme, someone who approached women in apparently stable marriages to extract information that could be used against their families. Amanda was shocked to hear this, but her lover showed no surprise. He knew he had been discovered, but he tried to turn the situation around, accusing Lucas of being controlling, of suffocating Amanda to the point where she needed to look for something else. Lucas didn't give in. He explained that he had done his own investigation and now had enough evidence to publicly unmask the man. Amanda tried to process what she was hearing, but it was clear she didn't know the full extent of her lover's intentions. She looked at him with a look that wavered between anger and disappointment, realizing that she had been used in ways she hadn't even imagined. Lucas stood up, his posture firm but visibly exhausted. He looked at Amanda one last time before leaving, saying there was nothing more to discuss. She tried to hold him back, begging for a chance to explain, to redeem herself, but he just looked at her with eyes that no longer held love, just a devastating emptiness. He left the room, leaving her to deal with the weight of her choices and the revelation that she had trusted someone who had not only destroyed her marriage but also manipulated her in a game far bigger than she could comprehend. Upon returning to the car, Lucas felt the weight of the night finally settle. He knew this was just the beginning of a long battle to rebuild his life. Amanda, on the other hand, remained in the room, staring at the envelope that contained the truth about the man she had become involved with, realizing that her actions had not only destroyed her marriage, but also put her in a vulnerable position that she never could have predicted. Lucas drove along the road without a defined direction, his hands firmly on the steering wheel, while his mind revolved around everything that had just happened. The city seemed too small to contain the weight of the emotions he carried, and he needed distance. The sound of the engine was the only thing that filled the crushing silence inside the car. The echo of the words spoken in the hotel room still reverberated in his mind. Every sentence, every expression on Amanda's face, every attempt by her lover to justify himself, were like barbs that he couldn't remove. He parked at a gas station on the side of the road. He bought a bottle of water and leaned against the car, trying to regain control of himself. As he took small sips, he felt his cell phone vibrate in his pocket. He hesitated before looking, knowing the messages would be from her. When he finally unlocked the screen, he saw several messages from Amanda. Some were short, begging him to answer. Others were long, filled with regret and promises of change. Lucas read them with a cold expression, as if they were just empty words floating on an already torn paper. Please, Lucas, we need to talk. It can't end like this. I was stupid, but I didn't know everything you found out. Give me a chance to explain. He deleted the message without responding. While Lucas tried to organize his thoughts, Amanda was in the hotel room. The silence between her and her lover was now almost tangible. He tried to find something to say, but any attempt to sound confident seemed false even to himself. Amanda looked at him with a mixture of anger and despair. Did you know he was investigating? Did you know this could happen and didn't tell me anything? You left me here, in the middle of all this, as if I were just another piece in his little game. His voice shook, and each word carried accumulated frustration. He reached out, trying to hold her hand, but she backed away, her eyes full of tears. I trusted you. I trusted you because I thought you understood me, that you gave me what I needed. But now I see that you were playing me from the beginning. Who are you really? He sighed, running his hands through his hair, trying to compose himself. Amanda, I didn't lie to you. I never lied. But what your husband did here today. He wants you to see me as the villain. That's not who we are. We were looking for something we didn't have in our marriages, and that's what matters. You and me, we were real. She shook her head, a short, bitter laugh escaping her lips. Real? You think this is real? You left me exposed, vulnerable, and now what do I have? My marriage is over, my life is in chaos, and you're just worried about how this will affect you. I don't know which is more pathetic, believing in yourself or believing that this had any future. He tried to argue, but Amanda grabbed her things and left the room, ignoring his call. The hotel hallway seemed endless as she walked, footsteps echoing in the void. When he arrived at the car, he sat behind the wheel, his face still wet with tears, but his eyes were now fixed on a single objective, finding Lucas and trying to save what was left. Lucas, on the other hand, had decided to go home. Not to rest, but to start processing everything that needed to be done. When he arrived, the house seemed colder and emptier than ever. He entered, leaving the keys on the table, and stood in the room for a few seconds, looking around. Every corner of the house seemed to carry a memory, and now each one was tainted by what he had discovered. He threw himself onto the couch, resting his head in his hands. The evidence he had against Amanda's lover was solid, but that didn't lessen the weight of the betrayal. He knew he could expose the man, ruin his reputation, but part of him wondered if that would actually bring any relief. What he wanted most was to understand how things got to that point. He picked up his cell phone again, not to respond to Amanda, but to call a lawyer. It was time to definitively outline the next steps. Amanda arrived home shortly after. When he entered, he saw Lucas on the sofa, his expression impassive. She tried to get closer, but he raised his hand, indicating that he didn't want to hear anything. She stopped halfway, her heart racing. He finally broke the silence. Did you know who he was? From the beginning, did you know he did this to other women? His voice was low, but carried with a strength that made her shudder. She shook her head quickly, trying to formulate a response. No. I swear I didn't know. He never told me anything. I was lost, Lucas. I felt invisible, suffocated. And he appeared, and it seemed like he saw me, you know. As if I were someone again. Lucas laughed, but there was no humor in his laugh. And you thought that was it? That someone who only shows up to give you attention when it suits you is the answer to everything? And me? I was here the whole time, Amanda. I always have been. She took another step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I messed up. I know I messed up. But I never wanted to hurt you like this. I never thought you'd find out, that it would come to this. He looked up at her, and Amanda saw something she had never seen before, a coldness that seemed final. "And that's what hurts me the most, Amanda. Not the fact that you did what you did, but the fact that you never thought about the consequences. You only thought about yourself." She tried to argue, but he stood up, grabbing the car keys. "I can't stay here anymore now. I need space, time. And you. You need to think about what you want to do with your life. Because as it is, I don't see the two of us anymore." Lucas left, leaving Amanda alone in the house that, until that moment, was the symbol of the life they had built together. She sat on the living room floor, the tears coming back with a vengeance. For the first time, he felt the full weight of his choices. And now, as he stared at the emptiness around him, he realized that perhaps it was too late for any kind of repair. Lucas drove aimlessly for hours, trying to escape the whirlwind of thoughts that filled his mind. The deserted road seemed a reflection of the loneliness he felt. Streetlights flickered in the rearview mirror as if they were fragments of memories he would rather forget. Each kilometer traveled increased the physical distance between him and Amanda, but the emotional weight seemed to take root even deeper in his chest. He didn't know exactly where he was going, he just knew that he needed air, space, time to reorganize the pieces of his life that had been shattered. Amanda remained motionless on the living room floor, staring into space. The walls of the house that had once conveyed warmth and security now seemed to close in around her, as if she were being crushed by every wrong decision she made. His mind raced tirelessly, revisiting moments that seemed insignificant at the time but now carried an unbearable weight. She thought about how it all started, the emptiness that led her to seek something outside of marriage, and the naivety of believing she could control the consequences. Hours later, when she finally found the strength to get up, she walked to the studio. That space, which had always been his refuge, seemed different now, almost unrecognizable. The unfinished canvases, the dirty brushes, the colors scattered across the floor no longer brought him the same feeling of freedom. Amanda sat on the small bench in the corner of the studio and began to paint, as if, somehow, putting her emotions on canvas could ease the weight she was carrying. But each stroke seemed to only intensify the pain, as if the colors screamed what she couldn't verbalize. Lucas stopped at a small roadside cafe. He needed something to keep him awake, something to connect him to reality and take him away, even for a moment, from the thoughts that consumed him. As he took slow sips of coffee, he observed the movement around him. Couples came and went, laughing, talking, sharing moments that seemed so simple, but to him now seemed unattainable. He wondered at what moment simplicity disappeared from his life, when things became so complicated and heavy. The image of Amanda laughed in his mind, but that memory was soon replaced by that of her next to another man, and he felt the bitter taste of betrayal again. While Lucas struggled to find some kind of clarity, Amanda decided to call her best friend. She needed to talk, to vent, to hear a voice other than her own. When her friend answered, Amanda tried to sound calm, but her voice shook with each word. She only told part of what happened, omitting details that deeply embarrassed her, but enough for her friend to understand the gravity of the situation. On the other end of the line, the silence lasted longer than Amanda expected, and when she finally heard a response, it wasn't the comfort she was looking for. The friend was direct, pointing out that the destruction of the marriage was a consequence of choices Amanda had made. There was no escaping it. After hanging up, Amanda felt a lump in her throat, a feeling that, for the first time, she had no one to turn to. Lucas was her anchor, the person who was always there for her, even when she didn't know how to appreciate it. And now, she had lost him. Thinking about his absence was like trying to breathe in an airless, suffocating and desperate space. Lucas, on the other hand, was parked at a cheap motel on the side of the road. He rented a room just for the night, but he couldn't sleep. The bed seemed too hard, the air heavy, the silence oppressive. He stood up several times, pacing back and forth, reliving what he had seen at the hotel. He wondered what Amanda was doing at that moment, if she was thinking about him, if she was sorry. He wanted to hate her, he wanted to feel only anger, but the truth was that there was still love, a love that was bruised and covered in scars, but that still pulsed. The next morning, Amanda woke up early but didn't get out of bed. The weight of the previous hours seemed greater in the daylight. She knew she needed to act, she needed to do something to try to make amends for what she had done, but she didn't know where to start. He picked up his cell phone several times, typed messages to Lucas, but deleted them all before sending. Each word seemed insufficient, small compared to the magnitude of his actions. She wanted to beg for forgiveness, but part of her knew that maybe she didn't deserve it. Lucas was sitting on the motel balcony, watching the sunrise. The morning silence was almost comforting, but not enough to alleviate the chaos inside. He took out his cell phone and opened a message that Amanda had sent during the night. She asked to talk, to explain, to try to save what was left. Lucas closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He didn't know if he was ready to hear her. Part of him wanted answers, but another part feared what more might be revealed. After all, what else could Amanda hide? Back at the house, Amanda started to pack her things. She didn't know exactly why she did this, but it seemed like she needed an external order to try to put her mind at peace. While cleaning the studio, she found an album of old photos, images that showed happy moments between her and Lucas. Each photo was like a blow, a reminder of what they had before everything fell apart. She wondered if it was possible to be those people again, or if what they had now was just a broken reflection of the past. Lucas returned to the city at the end of the day, still not knowing what he would do next. He parked in front of a park where he used to run and decided to walk. The slow steps and fresh air helped him organize his thoughts, but they also brought more questions. He knew he needed to face Amanda, hear what she had to say, but he didn't know if he would be able to face his own pain without exploding. He sat on a bench and stayed there for hours, watching the movement around him, as if waiting for the world to give him some answer that he couldn't find on his own. Lucas parked the car in front of the house at nightfall. The lights on inside indicated that Amanda was there, but he hesitated before leaving. He stayed in the driver's seat for a few minutes, staring at the steering wheel, as if he was looking for the strength he needed to face yet another conversation. Finally, he took a deep breath and left, each step towards the door heavier than the last. When he opened it, he found Amanda in the living room, with her eyes fixed on an open photo album on her lap. She raised her head when she heard the door open, her face pale and marked by an expression of tiredness mixed with regret. He didn't say anything at first, just walked over and sat in the armchair across from her. Amanda closed the album slowly, setting it aside. The silence between the two was almost palpable, an abyss that seemed impossible to cross. Finally, Amanda broke the silence, her voice hoarse, as if each word required an enormous effort. "I don't know how to start, Lucas. I don't know if there's anything I can say that makes sense to you right now." He looked at her, his eyes steady, but without the anger from before. "So maybe start by being honest, for the first time in a long time. Don't spare me, Amanda. Don't pretend it was something smaller than it was. I want to hear everything." She hesitated, but knew she had no choice. She began to speak, detailing not only the moments that led to the betrayal, but also the feelings that pushed her towards it. She spoke about the emptiness she felt, the feeling of being lost, of not being seen. He tried to explain, but each word seemed to only deepen the pain on Lucas's face. He listened in silence, his fists clenched, as if every detail was a blow he was forcing himself to endure. When she finished, silence once again dominated the room. Lucas lowered his head, rubbing his eyes with his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm but filled with sadness. "I wanted to understand, Amanda. I wanted to find a reason to forgive, to try to move on. But all I hear is you telling me that I was never enough. That everything I did for us, for you, meant nothing at the end." She tried to interrupt, but he raised his hand, asking her to continue. "What hurts most isn't the betrayal itself, it's the fact that you never trusted me enough to tell me what was wrong. You chose to lie, to hide, instead of trying to fix what we had. And now, I don't know if there's anything to fix." Amanda began to cry, but he remained firm, looking at her with an expression that seemed to seal his decision. "I've decided I'm going to move on, Amanda. I don't know how yet, but I know I can't go on like this. It's not just because of what you did, but because of what it means to us. What we had is no longer there, and I can't pretend it exists." He stood up, walking to the door. Amanda tried to get closer, holding his arm, but Lucas gently freed himself. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Amanda. I hope that, somehow, you can repair what was broken inside you. But I can't be a part of this. Not anymore." He left, leaving Amanda alone in the room. She fell to her knees, her face buried in her hands, tears flowing uncontrollably. For the first time, he felt the full weight of his actions, not just for what he had lost, but for what he had destroyed. The emptiness that once consumed her now felt unbearable, an absence she knew she could never fill again. Lucas, in turn, drove to a nearby park. He sat down on a bench and stayed there for hours, watching the stars. He thought about everything that happened, about the love he once felt for Amanda, and about the pain that now occupied that space. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a small spark of hope. He thought about the possibility of starting over, of finding something new, something that wasn't marked by pain. In the weeks that followed, Lucas began to rebuild his life. He filed for divorce, divided the assets and left Amanda with the house, preferring to start over in a different place. He focused on work, but also started taking time for himself, exploring hobbies he'd always wanted to try but never had the chance to. In one of those moments, he met someone. A woman who, like him, was also rebuilding herself. They began talking, at first casually, but soon realized a connection they both thought they had lost forever. Amanda continued on her journey of repentance and self-discovery. She sought professional help, trying to understand the choices she made and the reasons that led her there. She spent months alone, facing her own demons and trying to become someone better. Although she never stopped loving Lucas, she understood that love alone was not enough to erase what had happened. She decided to focus on herself, trying to find peace amidst the chaos she created. Amanda's lover, on the other hand, faced the consequences of his actions. Lucas handed over the evidence he had to the competent authorities, and he ended up being exposed for his manipulations and financial crimes. His life quickly fell apart, and he found himself alone, with no one to blame but himself. The cycle of lies and deceit he cultivated has finally come to an end. Each character followed a different path, but they were all forever marked by the events that connected them. Betrayal left deep scars, but it also opened doors for change, for new beginnings. Life, although hard, continued, and each of them needed to find a new purpose, a new way to move forward. Now that the story has come to an end, we want to know, what did you think of this journey? Share your opinion in the comments, as it is very important to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, full of emotions and twists. And remember, here, we do not support any type of betrayal. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.